You wouldn't believe how I got revenge. But to understand why, we have to go back to a rainy Thursday night, the night everything I thought I knew about my wife, my marriage, and honestly, myself, began to unravel. It started not with a fight, or a confession, or some caught-in-the-act drama. No, it started with a cassette tape. Yeah, you heard me right. A cassette tape. Those things most people threw out with their Walkmans in the early 2000s. But my father, rest his soul, had been a sound engineer back in the day, the kind who hoarded boxes of reels, tapes, and half-functioning gear in our garage like gold bars. After he passed, I inherited it all. And for years, I couldn't bring myself to touch any of it. Until that Thursday. I don't even know why I went digging. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe, deep down, something in me knew I needed to find that tape. The recorder still worked. Barely. It clicked and whirred like a tired old man waking up from a coma. I popped in the first tape I found. It was labeled in my dad's messy handwriting, Live Mix 1989. It crackled to life with a burst of static and an old blues riff. Then I saw it. At the bottom of the box, a tape with no label. Just a strip of yellowing adhesive across the top. Curious, I flipped it over. On the B-side, barely visible, were the words, "For me." I almost didn't play it. Almost. But something about those words, for me, it's in the back of my skull. I slid the tape in and pressed play. The voice that came through wasn't my dad's. It wasn't music. It was her. My wife. And she wasn't talking to me. At first, I thought it was some old voice memo. She had always been the reflective type, the kind who recorded her thoughts while driving or journaling aloud. But as the minutes passed, I realized this wasn't just introspection. This was a conversation. Or rather, a confession. He doesn't even suspect anything. It's almost funny how easy it is sometimes. She laughed, and the sound of it, her laugh, that damn laugh I used to love, made my blood freeze. I paused the tape. My hand was trembling. I rewound 10 seconds. Press play again. Easy it is sometimes. Her voice was casual. Relaxed. The kind of tone you use when talking to someone you trust deeply. Or when you're sure no one else is listening. For the next 30 minutes, I sat there in stunned silence, listening to fragments of a woman I no longer recognized. She talked about someone, didn't name him yet, and spoke of the thrill, how she had control, how he thinks I'm his. That part stung. She meant me. But the worst part? She was proud of it. Like a hunter admiring her prize wall. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next day. I couldn't. Not until I knew everything. That's when the obsession started. I searched every box, every drawer, every storage bin we had. I found 5 more tapes. All of them different lengths. Some were just her talking to herself. Others had phone calls, captured accidentally, I think, by a lazy habit of hitting record and forgetting to stop it. But those accidents? They gave me more truth than I'd ever gotten from her directly. That's when I realized. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a blueprint. A playbook of lies, manipulation, and twisted justifications. And she had no idea she was handing it to me. The thing is, I wasn't going to throw it in her face. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. I was going to build something with it. Something she would never see coming. Because I knew her weakness better than she thought I did. She craved control. Attention. The illusion of being the smartest person in the room. So I gave it to her. I played dumb. Kept smiling. Held her at night and asked about her day like I always had. But in secret, I was working. Mapping her words. Tracking her patterns. Planning a stage for the greatest performance of her life. And she was going to be the star. Revenge isn't loud. It's patient. It starts with a whisper on an old cassette tape. And it ends, well, you'll see. Let's just say, you wouldn't believe how I got revenge. The day after I heard the first tape, I didn't sleep. Didn't eat much either. My body moved through the motions, but my mind was caught in a loop, her voice, her words, the way she laughed when she thought I'd never find out. It echoed through me like a ghost rattling the pipes of a house that looked fine from the outside, but was rotting from within. I kept telling myself it might still be a misunderstanding. A prank. Some twisted therapy exercise. But when I found the second tape, all hope disappeared. This one started with the sound of her car door slamming. She must have left the recorder on by accident again. She was on the phone. I recognized the tone immediately, soft, teasing, half-whispered. He thinks I'm at yoga. I even lit a candle before I left, just to make it smell right when I get back. She giggled. You're such a bad influence. I paused it, took a breath, then hit play again. No, I told him it's a women-only studio, so he wouldn't even think of showing up. Honestly, I think he's just grateful I have a hobby. Poor thing doesn't even realize he's the hobby. That was the moment I stopped feeling pain. I started feeling clarity. She wasn't just cheating. She was strategizing, enjoying it, using me as a prop in her little private drama. I needed to understand the full scope. So I made a map. Not a digital one. A real, physical map, timeline, locations, possible suspects. I printed transcripts of everything I could hear clearly on the tapes. Bought a new notebook. Labeled each recording. I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like an investigator. By the end of the week, I had a solid pattern. Most of her yoga nights fell on Thursdays. Late client meetings clustered around the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. Every few months, she had weekend retreats out of town, and now I knew those weren't retreats. They were rendezvous. I also started testing her responses. I'd casually ask her, "How was yoga tonight?" and watch her eyes. She never looked directly at me when she lied. She blinked more, chewed her lip. One time, I asked if she saw Mara, a made-up name, and she nodded. "Yeah, she's really nice." Gotcha. She had no idea I was studying her like a subject under glass. But she wasn't just the experiment, she was the control group, too. Then, I got my hands on a digital audio converter. Started backing up the tapes, enhancing audio, cleaning out the static. I even watched tutorials on forensic audio recovery, late nights, headphones on, her voice always just beneath the hiss. And that's when I caught the name. One whisper at the end of a call. "Love you too, Elliot." Elliot. Not exactly a common name. Not in our circle. But I knew that name. From her work. He was a vendor. A marketing consultant she'd worked with on a nonprofit campaign. He'd even been in our house. Ate lasagna at our dinner table. I felt nothing. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Just focus. Because now I had a name. And here's the thing about cheating. It's rarely spontaneous. It's layered. Systematic. Built on dozens of little lies stacked like bricks. But every brick leaves fingerprints. So I started collecting them. Receipts. Her call logs. Social media metadata. I even created a throwaway account to monitor both of their profiles. She was careful, but not flawless. One evening, while she was in the shower, I cloned her phone using a tool I found in a cybersecurity forum. Legal? Probably not. But morally? I was far past that question. The truth isn't always clean. Sometimes, you have to crawl through the filth to get to it. And what I found only deepened the betrayal. Photos. Hidden albums. Notes she'd written for herself about his smile, his energy, how alive he made her feel. Meanwhile, I was the dead one in this equation. The placeholder. The anchor she pretended to respect. But the most interesting part? She still said she loved me. Almost every night. Routine, automatic, like brushing her teeth. And I set it back. Because now I knew something she didn't. She had no idea that every lie she whispered was becoming a part of something much, much bigger. Something permanent. She once told a friend, I heard this on one of the earlier tapes, that her biggest fear was being embarrassed. I don't care if people hate me, she said, but if they ever pitted me, I'd die. That's when I knew what kind of revenge I needed. Not yelling. Not slashing tires. Public truth. But not yet. I needed more. So I smiled. I kissed her forehead when she fell asleep. I brought her coffee in the morning. And every night, after she dozed off beside me, I opened the notebook and added more to the archive. The voice from the shadows kept whispering. And I kept listening. Some people lash out when they're betrayed. I went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock. Mine was surgical. Intentional. Like the silence in a chess match right before the queen slides across the board and ruins everything the opponent built. And my wife? She had no idea I picked up the board and started playing. You see, the thing about betrayal is, if you react too early, you lose. I wasn't going to storm into our bedroom with a printed stack of texts and demand answers. I wasn't going to cry into a pillow or key her boyfriend's car. No, I was going to let her hang herself. But first, I needed to test the rope. The following Thursday, her yoga night, I kissed her goodbye at 6 p.m. as usual. She wore her stretchy lavender leggings, the ones she claimed made her feel centered, and her tote bag was slung over her shoulder like a prop. Enjoy your class, I said. She smiled sweetly and said, Namaste. I almost laughed. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I activated a GPS tag I'd hidden under her passenger seat. Nothing fancy, just a small magnetized tracker I ordered online. I watched her on the app as she drove not toward the yoga studio, but to a small boutique hotel on the other side of town. Suite 204. It's always 204, I noted. The next morning, she was glowing, always a little too cheerful after yoga. I handed her a cup of coffee and asked if she'd tried that new stretch I read about online. Of course, she said. Burn like hell, but I think it helped with my hip. She had no idea I knew she'd been using those hips for something else. From that moment, I turned our marriage into a lab experiment. I changed the scent of my cologne to see if she'd notice. She didn't. I made fake dinner reservations, then claimed they were canceled to see if she'd look relieved. She did. I even left her little love notes, just to see how far she'd go pretending. She'd text back with heart emojis. Fake warmth. Fake affection. Everything had become performative. And now, I was the director of this sad little play. I also planted a USB mic under the couch, just to test the acoustics. She loved to talk on the phone when I wasn't around. She had no idea her whispers were becoming episodes. And that's when I decided it was time to introduce a new character to the drama. A therapist. Not a real one, of course, but someone who could pose as one. I knew her weak spot, emotional validation. She prided herself on doing the work and being reflective. So I told her I thought we should try couples therapy, that I wanted us to be stronger. Oh, baby, she said, putting a hand on my chest. This means a lot. I think we could really benefit from it. The actor I hired was perfect. Friendly, affirming, full of buzzwords. The sessions were held online, via Zoom, so I had full control of the setup. And here's the beautiful part. I recorded everything. I told her it was for note-keeping, so we could reflect later. She agreed without hesitation. The irony of her confessing her half-truths in front of a fake therapist into a real camera wasn't lost on me. Session by session, she gave me more. I just feel like we lost the spark, she said in week 2. I needed to feel seen again in week 3. It wasn't about love. It was about feeling alive in week 4. No names. No dates. But I didn't need those. The confession was in the subtext. In her eyes. In the way she paused between sentences like she wanted to say more but knew better. Meanwhile, I built the stage. I edited the sessions, cut in voiceovers, and slowly began turning the recordings into something new. A documentary-style video series, educational in tone, anonymous in delivery. I called it Love in the Mirror. 10-minute episodes. Each one introduced with a soft narrator voice, not mine, gentle music, and the blurred outline of a woman speaking her truth. Online, it exploded. The comments section filled with people saying, "This sounds like my ex-wife." Or, "I feel seen." Or, "Whoever this is, thank you for being so honest." Little did they know, the star of the show was still upstairs in my house, sipping green smoothies and planning her next self-care retreat. By the time episode 4 aired, I had over 10,000 subscribers. She had no idea. None. And I had no intention of stopping. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. And it was just getting started. There's a strange kind of power in knowing more than the person standing in front of you. It's not arrogance, it's restraint. Like holding an ace while everyone else plays their hand, convinced they're winning. And that's exactly where I wanted her. Smiling, oblivious, and completely unaware that the ground beneath her was already cracked. By this point, I had the recordings, the therapist footage, the metadata, the timeline, and even the audience. But I wasn't ready to strike yet. Because what I wanted wasn't just justice. I wanted her to walk into the truth on her own. So I changed tactics. Instead of waiting for her to lie again, I gave her space to tell the truth. Subtly. Casually. As if it would be no big deal if she did. The trick was, I made it feel safe. Have you ever felt guilty about anything in our marriage? I asked one evening, watching her scroll through her phone. She didn't even look up. What? No. Why would I? Strike one. A few days later, I left a fake letter half hidden in the kitchen drawer. It was folded, stained like it had been read too many times. It wasn't signed, but it said things like, "You promised this would be temporary, and he deserves to know." She found it. I watched her find it, then watched her quietly slip it into her purse, never mentioning a word. Strike two. Another week passed. I created a fake social media profile, a faceless, vague account that followed both her and Elliot. It started liking old photos, leaving cryptic comments. Just enough to be unsettling. She asked me one night, "Have you ever had the feeling someone's watching you online?" I pretended to yawn. "I think you've been listening to too many true crime podcasts." Strike three. The panic was subtle, but present. She started checking her phone more. Paranoia crept into her routine like a draft through a cracked window. And that's when I made my boldest move yet. I told her I forgave her. Not in a dramatic scene. Just over morning coffee. I don't know why, I said, but I feel lighter these days. Like I've forgiven things I didn't even understand before. She blinked. The spoon in her cereal paused for a second. Then she smiled. That's beautiful. I'm really proud of you. It was the most dishonest smile I'd ever seen. And that's when I knew the trap was nearly set. But there was one last card I wanted to play. I invited her to write a letter to herself. I told her it was part of a healing exercise our fake therapist recommended, something about introspection, closure, clarity. She hesitated, but agreed. She went into her home office, lit a candle, of course, and took out her favorite pen. I made her favorite tea, gave her space, and left the house. I waited in the car, watching the house from down the block. 45 minutes later, she texted. Done. That was surprisingly emotional. She had no idea I'd installed a hidden document sync software on her laptop 3 days earlier. The letter? It uploaded the second she hit save. I read it in my car. It was a masterpiece of rationalized betrayal. She didn't name Elliot, but she talked about him. About how it wasn't supposed to last, about how guilt only comes when you're done pretending, and how maybe it was selfish, but at least it felt real. She ended with, sometimes the hardest part of lying isn't the lie itself, it's the version of you they fall in love with along the way. That sentence stuck with me. Because she was right. I had fallen in love with someone who never really existed. A version of her she created to match my expectations, to hide the one who loved control, thrill, and shadows more than intimacy. But now, that shadow was mine. I took that letter, added it to the digital folder titled The Archive, and sat in silence for a long time. Not sad. Not angry. Just aware. I was beginning to see her clearly for the first time. And even clearer than that, I saw my next move. Because up until now, she was still the one holding the illusion. Still believing she had control. That was about to change. Next up, the party. There's a particular kind of pleasure in planning something so precise, so slow-burning, that the target never realizes they've already lost. That was the game now. She still kissed me in the mornings. Still texted me pictures of sunsets with little hearts. Still laid her head on my shoulder when we watched documentaries at night, though now I watched her more than the screen. She didn't know she was living in a theater, and I was about to give her the lead role in a production she'd never forget. It started with something simple, a dinner party. I told her it was for my birthday. Small, intimate, just a few close friends. She loved planning events, so I handed her the reins. Let her book the catering. Pick the wine. Choose the playlist. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You really deserve to be celebrated." The irony almost made me choke. While she was curating canapes, I was curating files. I bought a small projector. Portable, silent, powerful. I tested it every night while she slept. Perfect angles. Crisp sound. I called it Project Glass. The idea was simple. A short film, 10 minutes long. A montage of audio clips, therapy snippets, blurred videos, fragments of her own letter. Just enough for the people in that room to connect the dots. Not accuse. Not attack. Just reveal. Truth is its own punishment, when wrapped in silence and played before those you swore to protect. But I wasn't ready to play it. Not yet. First, I had to shake her. I started planting more illusions, a receipt from a fictional hotel tucked into my wallet. A mysterious perfume on my shirt collar. A late meeting that didn't exist. She asked, "You're working late again?" I smiled. Yeah. Big proposal coming up. The shift was immediate. She started texting more. Checking my phone screen when she thought I wasn't looking. For the first time in months, she was paying attention to me. And I loved it. Because for once, her mind was busy wondering if I was lying. She even asked me to come to bed earlier one night. "I miss you," she said. It almost felt real. But it wasn't. Not anymore. I'd become a stranger she was trying to win back. That's when I knew the dinner party would hit hardest. I finalized the guest list. My sister, her brother, 2 close friends from both sides. People who knew us. People she respected. People she feared disappointing. I created custom place cards. Personalized candles. A tablecloth she loved. I wanted it to look perfect, because the fall from perfect always hurts more. 3 days before the party, she bought a new dress. Soft blue, her lucky color. She tried it on for me and spun slowly. "You like it?" she asked. "I love it," I said. And I did. Not for the reason she thought, but because it would become the last outfit she'd ever wear in this version of her life. On the day of the party, I woke up early, set the table, checked the projector, ran through the sequence one more time. The final frame read, "Sometimes, the person who loves you most is the one who holds the mirror." I knew she'd recognize the line. She'd written it. That night, everything was perfect. The guests arrived at 7 p.m. sharp. Wine flowed. Jokes were shared. The music was soft, background warmth. She played the role of the flawless hostess, charming, composed, radiant. No one suspected a thing. At 8:40 p.m., I raised my glass. "I just want to say thank you," I began, "for being here, for celebrating, not just my birthday, but what really matters. Truth, connection, honesty." She smiled, proud. She thought I was talking about us. Then I said, "Before dessert, I want to share something I've been working on. A little project. 10 minutes. Just watch." I hit play. The room dimmed, and her voice filled the space. The first 5 seconds were just audio. Her voice. Soft. Introspective. It wasn't about him, really. It was about me. About who I used to be. People leaned forward, wine glasses stilled in their hands. Then, visuals began. Blurred footage from our therapy sessions. Her words layered over them like a confession set to music. I didn't mean to fall, but when you're drowning in routine, even poison feels like oxygen. The room froze. She froze. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on the screen, just like everyone else. There was no yelling, no accusations. Just her voice, broken up and raw, describing how she drifted, how it felt exciting, how guilt was manageable as long as I acted grateful enough. A few guests started to glance at her. She laughed, a nervous, too loud laugh, and said, "Is this some kind of prank? Is that AI? This has to be AI." But then came the letter. Her words. Her handwriting. Shown in flashes as the narrator read her final lines. "I loved the version of him who didn't ask questions, who didn't suspect, who let me feel clean while I was dirty. But now, I don't think he exists anymore. And I'm terrified he's watching." Silence. Then the screen went black. I stood. Calmly. "Thank you," I said, "for being here tonight. Dessert is in the kitchen." And I walked out. Behind me, the room remained silent. She didn't follow. Not immediately. I think part of her thought it was all a dream. A nightmare. Maybe. Something that would vanish if she stayed still long enough. But the nightmare was awake. And it was sitting in the kitchen with a slice of lemon pie. Eventually, she came in. No makeup now. Sweating. Eyes wide. Pale like a ghost caught between past and present. What was that?" she whispered. "You tell me," I replied. I don't understand. That wasn't meant for anyone. I was working through things. I didn't do anything." "Are you sure about that?" I asked. She sat down, suddenly small. She clutched her hands together as if praying. "Was this your plan? To humiliate me?" "No," I said. "My plan was to understand the truth. And to help you say it in your own words." She looked around, hearing footsteps, murmurs from the living room. "They all know now," she said. I nodded. "Yes. But more importantly, you know now. And that's what matters." That broke her. Tears finally came. But not the kind that seek forgiveness. The kind that come when the dam finally cracks and you realize the flood can't be stopped. She left that night. Didn't pack a bag. Just keys, phone, and shame. But here's the part most people wouldn't expect. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Not because I regretted it. I didn't. But because there's something haunting about getting exactly what you planned for and realizing it doesn't erase the hurt. It just gives it a name. And now, that name was out there. The archive had done its job. But its purpose had only just begun. After she left, the silence was deafening. You'd think it would feel peaceful, like a storm had passed. But no. It was more like walking through the wreckage the morning after. Calm, yes, but only because everything that could fall already had. The house was still full of her. Her scent on pillows. Her books stacked like statues of the person she used to pretend to be. 1,000 tiny echoes of a life that was never real. I didn't touch anything. Not at first. I needed to sit in it. To feel the gravity of it all. But one night, maybe 3 days later, I walked past the old wooden cabinet in the hallway. The one that held our memories. And I stopped. Inside were photo albums, anniversary cards, ticket stubs, and most importantly, the cassette box. The archive. The thing that started it all. I sat down, turned on the recorder, and pressed play on a random tape. Her voice. You ever feel like you're lying just by smiling? I smiled. It was strange. Familiar. Almost tragic. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just evidence. This was a story. A powerful one. One that wasn't just about betrayal, but about how easy it is to fall asleep in your own life while someone else rewrites your ending. That night, I opened my laptop and made a decision. The archive would go public. Not the names. Not the full recordings. But the essence, the patterns, the psychology, the warning signs. I edited the clips into themed episodes, removed identifiers, and added commentary. Episode titles like The Performance of Love, Microlies, Death by 1,000 Cuts, Gaslight Gospel, When They Rewrite You, Closure is a Myth, and Why That's Okay. I uploaded them to a new channel. I expected maybe a few hundred views. By the end of the first week, I had over 50,000. By the end of the month, 500,000. Comments poured in hundreds, then thousands. People saying, "This is my story. This helped me leave. I thought I was crazy, now I feel sane." I began doing voiceovers, writing accompanying blog posts, collaborating with therapists, and slowly, I started healing. Not because the pain disappeared, but because I gave it purpose. And that purpose became a platform. I got messages from women, men, even teenagers, all saying the same thing. I thought I was the only one. You never realize how common betrayal is until you start naming it out loud. And in naming it, you weaken its power. I turned our guest room into a mini studio, replaced the bed with sound panels, hung quotes on the wall, lit it warmly. The room where she once hid her texts became the place where I now read thousands of them, from people trying to piece their lives back together. Irony? Maybe. Poetic? Absolutely. One day, I got a message. It was from her. Just one line. Was it worth it? I didn't respond, because that question had already been answered 1,000 times over by the people who wrote to me late at night saying thank you for surviving publicly. That's what the archive had become. Not revenge. A resource. And strangely, a kind of redemption. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because I still had one final tape. One she didn't know existed. And it was time to press play. There was one tape left. It sat at the bottom of the box, unmarked. No label. Just dust and time clinging to it like a secret too tired to hide. I almost didn't notice it. But one night, during a live stream Q&A for the archive, someone asked me, "Was there ever a moment you almost forgave her?" It struck me. Because yes, there was. Not when she cried. Not when she left. But a week later, when I found an old voicemail she'd left me years ago. She was laughing in it. Just laughing, chasing the dog through the backyard, breathless, saying "I love you" like she meant it. That version of her? I missed him. I missed me. So I went back to the box, found the tape, slipped it into the recorder, pressed play. It started with static. Then, her voice. Younger. Less filtered. Raw. "Entry number 1, she said. "I'm starting this because I can't talk to anyone. Not really. And if I don't say these things out loud, I think I'll explode." She went on. Not about infidelity. Not yet. She talked about pressure. About fear. About being raised to please, to perform, to be perfect. How marriage felt like a mirror she was afraid to look into, because it reflected someone she didn't recognize. And then, somewhere in the middle. "I think I've always known I'd ruin this. I love him. God, I love him. But something in me doesn't believe I deserve it. And when you don't think you deserve love, you start breaking it. Quietly. Slowly. Just enough so it fits your version of pain." I sat there, silent. Because that was honesty. Painful. Twisted. But honest. She wasn't a monster. Not completely. She was broken. And in her brokenness, she'd shattered us both. But here's the thing. Knowing that didn't excuse her. It explained her. And sometimes, that's all we get, an explanation. Not closure. Not repair. Just clarity. I clipped a segment of that tape. Just her voice saying, "I don't think I deserve him." And I used it to open my next video. Title, "Why We Destroy What Loves Us." It went viral. Because too many people knew that feeling of watching someone sabotage something beautiful, not because they wanted to, but because they didn't know how to hold it. The final tape closed a chapter in me. Not because I forgave her, but because I forgave myself for not seeing it sooner. In the comments, someone wrote, "This man turned betrayal into art." Maybe, but I didn't do it for art. I did it because I needed to survive. And now, I was thriving. I got an email from a major platform. They wanted to adapt the archive into a docuseries. Real stories. Real voices. Anonymous. Powerful. They offered money. A lot of it. And I hesitated. Because this story, as much as it hurt, was mine. But then I thought about that night, the night I hit play on a tape no one was ever meant to hear, and how that moment changed everything. So I wrote back. Yes, but only if I get to narrate it. The docuseries launched to millions. Viewers around the world watched as stories unfolded, stories that echoed their own pain, their own silence. I narrated each episode, not as a victim, but as a witness. A man who'd seen behind the curtain and lived to tell it. My voice became something people trusted. And then she showed up. Not in a message. Not in a call. She showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her in 8 months. She looked smaller, paler, like the spotlight had finally turned away and the dark was too loud to bear. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. She stood there holding nothing. No bag. No gift. Just a look, hollow and wide, like someone who ran from a fire only to realize they carried the flame with them. I saw it, she said. All of it. I said nothing. I thought I could escape it, move on, but it's everywhere. My voice. My words. You turned me into something. She trailed off. I waited. You made the world see me. No, I said. You made the world see you. I just held up the mirror. She looked down. Then, softly. I miss you. Those 3 words. For years, I would have done anything to hear them. Would have built a house out of those syllables, lived in it. Now, they sounded like static. I stepped outside. Closed the door behind me. We stood on the porch, 2 ghosts orbiting a home that no longer belonged to either of us. You don't miss me, I said. You miss who you were when I believed in you. Tears welled in her eyes. She tried to speak, but I raised my hand. I'm not angry, I continued. Not anymore. I'm not bitter. I don't hate you. She looked up, hopeful. But that doesn't mean I'll let you back in. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. And peace doesn't mean pretending. Her shoulders slumped. I thought maybe we could talk. Just talk. We are, I said. And now we're done. I turned, walked back inside, locked the door. And for the first time in nearly a decade, I felt free. Not triumphant. Not smug. Just clean. Because closure isn't a door someone else opens. It's the one you close, gently, firmly, and never unlock again. Later that night, I recorded the final episode. I titled it, When They Come Back. I ended it with these words. They always return when you no longer need them. That's not love. That's gravity losing its pull. I slept better that night than I had in years. And when I woke up, I didn't look back. Healing doesn't come in a straight line. It's not a movie montage with sad music and a final scene where the hero walks into the sunset. It's more like rebuilding a house while still living in it. Dust in the air. Nails on the floor. The echo of old walls. But rebuild it, I did. Brick by brick. At first, I just kept creating. More videos. More writing. I started guesting on podcasts, collaborating with authors and mental health professionals. Not talk about her, but about us. The ones who were betrayed, and the ones who broke. Because both sides need understanding. Not excuse, but truth. The archive became more than content. It became a movement. I got invited to speak at a small conference. Then a bigger one. Then a TEDx stage. Each time, I stood in front of strangers and said, your pain is not proof that you failed. It's proof that you were real. People cried. People stood. People hugged. And I started living again. I adopted a dog. Named him Echo. Because some ghosts deserve a gentler sound. I moved to a smaller place. Near the coast. Where the waves erased footsteps faster than memory could. And one morning, sipping coffee as the sun came up, I realized something simple but life-changing. I had no interest in going back. Not to her. Not to bitterness. Not to the version of me who needed her to feel whole. Because I was already whole. One day, I got another letter. Handwritten. Careful. From a viewer who said my story saved her life. She watched the Why We Destroy What Loves Us video 15 times. She left her abuser. Enrolled in school. Started again. I owe you everything, she wrote. I smiled. Then I wrote back. You owe me nothing. You saved yourself. I just lit the hallway. And that is where the story ends. Not with revenge. Not with reconciliation. But with something rarer. A man who learned that peace isn't found in the answers. It's found in the choosing. Choosing to let go. Choosing to forgive without reopening the wound. Choosing to walk forward, not to escape the past, but to meet the future where it stands. And that's what I did. The archive is closed. But I'm still here. Living. Lighter. Wiser. Free. If this story spoke to you, even just one part of it, hit that like button. It helps this message reach someone who needs it. Subscribe for more real stories, real healing, and the kind of truth we rarely say out loud. This was The Archive, and the next chapter starts with you.